Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know this rush hour of December 19, Thursday. I'm Riza Diaz. Kickstarting today's rush with the expected release of the long-awaited verdict on the Maguindanao massacre. And we have Dale De Vera reporting live from Camp Bagong Diwa. Dale.
Riza, today's biggest question is whether the suspects on the gruesome death of 59 persons will be convicted or not, as Judge Jocelyn Solis Reyes of Quezon City Regional Trial Court Branch 221 is set to deliver her verdict later at 9. Right behind me is where we will witness history as it unfolds. Riza, with a very limited space, the people who will be allowed inside the courtroom are Judge Jocelyn Solis Reyes, the accused, their lawyers and relatives, families of the victims, government and private prosecutors. Of the 197 charged with multiple murder, only 101 stood trial for the murder of the 58 individuals. 32 of those killed were journalists. A select group of media were given access but won't be allowed to enter the courtroom. Then at 9 in the morning, Judge Solis Reyes will bang the gavel, a signal that the reading of the verdict will begin. Two scenarios might happen here. Only the dispositive part or the end part of the ruling will be read by the clerk of court, or the entire decision will be read. Reports say the reading of the verdict will run for a minimum of 4 hours. After the reading, Judge Solis Reyes will be the first to leave the court. Riza, emotions will surely be high after the final words of the decision were read. For now, the families of both the victims and the accused could only hope for a decision to be handed in their favor. Riza?
Thank you. That was Dale De Vera reporting live at Camp Bagong Diwa in Taguig. Now, they say dirty politics is nothing new. However, that took for a much deadlier turn 10 years ago in Maguindanao. Dale De Vera returns with his report.
On November 23, 2009, here in Sitio Masalay in Ampatuan town, Maguindanao, 58 people were brutally murdered. Among the victims were the wife and relatives of Ismael Toto Mangudadatu, who was set to run for governor. He was to face then the Ampatuans for the 2010 national elections, challenging their decade-long hold on the province. According to Toto, he received information of the Ampatuans' plan to kill him. Thinking that the Islamic culture of respecting women would stand, he sent his wife, together with female relatives, to Sharif Agwak to file his certificate of candidacy on his behalf. As additional shield, they asked 32 journalists to join the convoy, but they were all brazenly killed in broad daylight. According to witnesses, the incumbent's son, Datu Unsay, and his men were already waiting for the convoy at 8 a.m. on November 23. Mangudadatu recalls receiving a call from his wife, informing them that they have been blocked by a group of men. Members of the convoy, as well as innocent passers-by, were taken to Ampatuan, Maguindanao. Here, they were shot mercilessly. To cover up the crime, the victims were immediately buried using a government-owned backhoe. On that day, Datu Andal Sr. allegedly called his son to ask for updates. Datu Unsay told his father that only media remained alive. The elder Ampatuan supposedly ordered the killing of the media men. 10 years later, the Quezon City Regional Trial Court Branch 221 will hand down its verdict Thursday. If found guilty, they can appeal the conviction all the way to the Supreme Court. If the verdict is not guilty, it will be the end game of what is now called the trial of the century. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we are One News.
Members of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, or NUJP, held a candle lighting event during the eve of the promulgation of the Maguindanao massacre case. The group offered prayers for the victims of the gruesome murder and hoped that the verdict would lead to a conviction for the suspects, which include some members of the Ampatuan clan. The NUJP also participated in the programs led by the victims' families. They wore armbands and headbands calling for justice for the slain 58 and the protection of press freedom.
Umaasa tayo na ito na yung huli nating vigil, ito na yung huli nating pakikita at bukas, sa loob ng ilang oras ay magkaroon ng hustisya.
It was a long journey for the relatives of the Maguindanao massacre victims, but while sentiments are mostly in their favor, a former defense counsel says a guilty verdict is unlikely. Ria Fernandez will tell us why.
It has been a decade since Ramonita Salaysay's husband was killed in the Maguindanao massacre, but reminiscing her loss still feels like opening old wounds. But forgiveness might still be far-fetched for Ramonita.
Yung forgiveness po, paano ko maibigay kung hindi naman nila inaamin? Tama lang din na maparusahan sila sa ginawa nila.
From police officers refusing investigation to witnesses recanting testimonies and getting killed, legal counsel to the victims, Attorney Harry Roque admits the previous years had not been easy. But despite these, Roque hopes the evidence presented would lead to conviction.
Baka hindi 100% conviction rate. Ganun pa man, siyempre, kung todo ang dasal. Ang importante, yung dalawang magkapatid na Ampatuan, sana mabasahan na nagkasala.
As the legal crusade carries on, 80 suspects remain at large. Among them is the brother of Andal Sr., Datu Canor, believed to have participated in the planning and execution of the gruesome killing. Roque believes Datu Canor is freely roaming around the MILF camp.
Nakikiusap naman ako sa liderato ng BARM, hulihin nyo naman. Dahil bagamat kayo ay meron ng otonomiya ngayon, sakop pa rin kayo ng batas ng Pilipinas.
International advocate group Human Rights Watch also called for the arrest of other suspects in hiding. But despite the public clamor to incarcerate the suspects behind the massacre, former legal counsel of Andal Ampatuan Jr., Raymond Fortun, says a guilty verdict is impossible to be handed down. He says the evidence presented against his former client is still insufficient. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Now let's get the latest from Greg Gregorio, who is stationed at Camp Bagong Diwa, where the accused, including the prime suspect Zaldi Ampatuan, are currently detained. Greg, we want to know the latest situation. All right, we're going to circle in back to Greg in a short while. Meanwhile, Maguindanao
here in Taguig remains on a lockdown as implemented by the National Capital Region Police Office. This means that prisoners inside the compound cannot receive any visitors. According to NCRPO Acting Regional Director Police Brigadier General Debod Sinas, this is part of the security measures for today's promulgation of the decade-old Maguindanao massacre case. Thus, the tighter security has been implemented. As early as 7 a.m. today, members of the media are no longer allowed to enter the camp. According to the NCRPO PIO, this is to give way for the arrival of the prosecutor. But relatives and supporters of the accused and of the victims are still allowed inside. According to SINA, supporters of the Mangudadatus are asked to stay at the parking lot inside the camp near the entrance, while the supporters of the Ampatuans are at a parking lot outside the camp. Each group is attended by the Civil Disturbance Management Unit of the NCRPO. Demonstrations in the vicinity and outside of the Camp Bagong Diwa are also prohibited today, including display of placards. Meanwhile, those who will enter the camp would have to go through a face recognition process to verify with the intel records that no individual is suspected as a threat. The NCRPO has also coordinated with the NBI, the QCPD, and the Southern Police District for the security of the judge, court administrator, and all the roads leading to the camp. The PNP Special Action Force are also on alert if in case they will be needed. Riza, the promulgation is set to start at 9 in the morning. Sinas assured that they have contingency plans for whatever security measures might be needed. Should the accused be convicted, they will be transported to the new Bilibid prisons. And if they get acquitted, then they will be escorted out of the premises. Earlier, we have seen some known personalities who have already arrived here, like Attorney Harry Roque and Volunteers Against Crimes and Corruption Chairman Boy Evangelista. Evangelista is 99.9% confident that the Maguindanao massacre case would turn out positive for the victims of this incident. Same hopes is given by the National Press Club. Riza?
Thank you. That was Greg Gregorio reporting live from Camp Bagong Diwa. Meanwhile, Maguindanao Representative Toto Mangudadatu is prepared to leave Congress if the court rules in favor of the Ampatuans. Justin Punsalang with the story.
Talagang magre-resign ako kung walang makitang guilty verdict. He'd rather abandon his post as lawmaker should the Quezon City Regional Trial Court rule in favor of the Ampatuans. For Maguindanao Representative Toto Mangudadatu, they have already presented enough evidence to prove the guilt of the Ampatuans in the 2009 Maguindanao massacre.
Hindi ko naman nila lahat pero dun sa mga major suspects pati dun sa nagplano mula nung July hanggang nagkaroon ng Maguindanao massacre, positibo kami doon.
Hopeful yet expecting the worst, Mangudadatu acknowledges that the fight is far from over.
Basta ilalaban namin ito ng habang buhay, hahanapin namin ang totoong hustisya. Kasi ang dito, hindi lamang po dito sa bukas ang katapusan ng laban May Court of Appeals, may Supreme Court.
Mangudadatu admits that revenge once crossed his mind, but with his faith still strong, he left everything for the courts to decide. He claims to have forgiven the Ampatuan Patriarch Andal Ampatuan Sr. who already passed away in 2015. But as for the rest of the clan, he believes they must still pay.
Dapat lang na talagang mahuli na itong mga at-large na to dahil hindi tayo nakakasiguro doon Oo, sa safety ng bawat isa.
He believes the Ampatuans still have a hold on power in Maguindanao, but he'd like to think that is just temporary. For News 5, Justine Punsalang, we are One News.
Now, aside from the victims' families, residents of the Ampatuan town are hoping that the Maguindanao massacre case will finally be closed today so that they too can move on from the tragedy that happened 10 years ago. Jenny Dongon reports.
It was 7 in the morning on November 23, 2009. Arnold Fernandez was supposed to lead the convoy of the wife of Ismael Toto Mangudadatu. She was to file her husband's gubernatorial candidacy against Andal Ampatuan Jr. But one call changed what could have been a deadly end for Arnold.
Sabi niya, Uncle, nasaan na kayo? Sabi ko, nandito pa sa bahay ni Assemblyman dahil paalis na kami. Sabi ko, no, Uncle, huwag kang magsama. Walang lalaki sa atin ang pasamahin. Babae lang lahat sa atin ang pasamahin.
Death threats aren't uncommon in this part of Mindanao, says Fernandez. But he didn't expect this one to end in the brutal killing of 58 people.
Para sa pananaw namin ang babae, i-exempt nila sa ganung brutally. Lalaki lang ang idamay nila. So babae ang pinasama namin doon.
To this day, Arnold still feels a stench of guilt. 6 of the 58 killed were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of them was Freddy's brother on his way to Cotabato City for work.
Ang family man, nag-move on naman. Oo. Kasi wala naman tayong magawa. Oo. Pinapa sa Diyos namin ang lahat. Sana mabigyan ng justice yung 58 na victim ng massacre. Yun naman ang prayer naman ng mga victims. No?
Residents of Ampatuan town hope that justice will finally prevail so they too can finally move on.
Kasi kami mga civilian, gusto namin malaman kung anong katotohanan ba sa Maguindanao massacre.
For News 5, Jenny Dongon, we are One News.
As a former broadcaster, PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar is optimistic for a favorable ruling on the Maguindanao massacre today. Andanar hopes that the judge can rule in favor of the 58 victims and their families, a majority of whom are members of the media. The secretary also assured that the Presidential Task Force on Media Security will continue its work, but noted that journalists still lack complete protection. That's why the former journalist called for the passing of House Bill 2476, or the Media Workers Welfare Act. Now, if passed into law, this will protect the media workers and ensure regular employee benefits for them. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us again next time for another round of Rush. I'm Riza Diaz. We are One News.